Welcome to Grit and Gravitas with Ann and Annie, bringing you savvy, spirited stories of success. We're excited to deliver 30 minutes of inspiration, impact, and goodness. We'll be bringing you guests and friends from around the country who have very special work and personal journeys. I'm Ann Dieter Gallagher, your co-host with Annie Carnathan, and this is Grit and Gravitas. Let's go! Okay, this is probably one of our coolest episodes of Grit and Gravitas, Annie Carnathan. I'm beyond excited, and I know you always talk about the word fangirl. I'm kind of fangirling here, and I can't wait to hear all of our guest tips. Selfishly, I want to know them all for myself, and I want to be smarter with etiquette and learn better executive presence and just personal presence. So we are super excited. Beyond excited to have Mariah Grumet Humbert. I hope I pronounced that okay, Mariah. And I have loved your content on Instagram. You are the sweetest person I know online there. So welcome to Grit and Gravitas.
Well, thank you so much. What a sweet introduction. I'm so honored to be here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. So Annie, buckle up. We're going to soft skills school is what we're doing.
Well, that's my superpower, and Mariah, it will go so fast. And so again, thank you for sharing this with our audience.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You know what, Anne, I think I should actually switch what I do to be called soft skills school, because maybe people wouldn't cock their heads so much when I say the word etiquette. Maybe I should just rebrand everything to call it soft skills school. It's brilliant.
We're here to help you do that if you decide to that. And Annie, I'm going to tell when in my conversations with Mariah, and she was so sweet to answer me on our Instagram messages, but I couldn't wait to tell my family all about Mariah's work and the extraordinary etiquette lessons she has. But I'll start with Knox's little story that I shared. So Knox is my 8-year-old, one of my grandsons. And we were just last week at their house, my son and daughter-in-law's house, after a baseball game or whatever. And we were having, dinner, and I had brought some homemade bread, and it was on the table, and Knox was touching, like 3-4 slices. And I said, "Hey, Knox," I said, "etiquette says that whatever piece you touch, you take." And he looked around. I said, "Who's etiquette?" So I told him,
literal, right?
I know, Mariah, take it away with that.
I think that is the sweetest, funniest story. As soon as you emailed me, I told my husband, and we were cracking up because, people look at what I do as such a serious profession, and I try and take some of the seriousness out of it to really make it approachable. And I mean, if you don't mind, I will definitely be telling this story
Totally
for years to come, because I think it's so innocent and sweet and super funny.
He was very serious. Like, who is there somebody I should be listening to? Who is this etiquette you speak of? But we have believed, Annie and I have talked to college students and high school students for years, and everything you're teaching, in your settings, is so applicable to them in how they comport themselves in a business interview, a business lunch, even email correspondence. So give us a little background of Old Soul Etiquette, which I love the name. And if you've got to follow Mariah on Instagram, because your outfits, I know you started in fashion design, so I'm going to stop talking and you're going to share your story, please.
No, thank you so much. You're really you are the hype women. You really are. You're hyping me up. So,
We're here for it.
Yes, no, you're wonderful at it. So I did start in the fashion industry. That's what I went to college for. It's where I started my career. And then when I moved to New York City to work in the garment district, I was living by myself and looking for something to do on the weekends to meet like-minded people. And so as a 22-year-old would, I signed up for an etiquette course because I was always so fascinated by the topic, really the history of it. I'm a big history buff, so I've always read the books and, studied the way that things worked back in the day. That's always what fascinated me. And so when I went to this course, I kind of had this aha moment that number one, I wasn't feeling super fulfilled in my corporate job. Number two, I felt like these were the word etiquette and the process of teaching it encompassed so many things that I was so passionate about. Really helping people to shine their light, working on confidence, working on ways to present yourself in the best way. And so I started an Instagram account to share some of the things that I was learning through the courses that I was taking. And then I learned that you could take a course to become certified to teach other people. So I did that, never intended for it to really be anything other than maybe coaching on the side or really for my own personal development. And then I woke up on a Monday morning and decided that I was going to leave my job on that day, which is the complete opposite my type A personality is so the opposite of that. So I gave my family a bit of a scare, and I said, it was a little abrupt. And I said, you know what, I have to give this 100% because if I don't, I'll never know what it can become. And so at the time, it was still the height of the pandemic. I was teaching a couple of virtual courses a month, not in a position to actually leave my very secure corporate job in corporate America to pursue this. But I did, and I haven't looked back since September of 2021.
Well, what a niche. I mean, oh my word. And she's so young. Like when I think etiquette, I think of my parents are actually my age. We're the ones that talk about that. But just going through your content, and you're clearly a passion for helping us develop the skills. Like you said, we don't often think of etiquette with confidence, but I think it's posture. Again, it's comportment. I saw you at the high tea, with, was that on the Today Show? Yes. Simple signs that really show other people that you've mastered some techniques, how to engage in a, personal and professional setting. So tell us, like, on your road then to launching your business, who was your target audience?
So my mission in what I do is to kind of help people redefine the idea of etiquette for our world today. So I define it as, having a certain level of social awareness and emotional intelligence to be able to assert the best version of yourself no matter where you are, what you're doing, or who you're with. You were saying that etiquette reminded you of, past generations and things like that. And it definitely has kind of that antiquated feel to it.
Right.
People have a lot of ideas of what it could mean. And so part of my mission is really making it work for our world today. And also kind of re-looking at it instead of a set of rules to be a set of tools, because I believe that, and of course, some of the rules are in place for certain things, but I think etiquette is so situational. And so it really, you have to be able to assert your best self on your feet, pivot in different situations. And so to answer your question, in the beginning, I was targeting many, many different audiences. I was teaching children, I was teaching teens, recent grads, adults, C-suite executives. Now the bread and butter of my business is actually business etiquette training. So I travel all around the country to train different companies and brands and groups on many different topics. I don't teach children as much anymore, although I still do by request. So my target market is everybody, because I think that etiquette is for everyone and our world needs it. And so whoever wants to listen to me talk about something I'm super passionate about, I will talk to you about it. But the bread and butter of my business is corporate and company trainings.
And I'm riveted by this because it's networking.
Yeah.
It's walking into a room of strangers and immediately bonding. And I think just the enormity of your body language, there's visual cues, there's unvisual, there's just so much wrapped up in that. But for our business audience, Mariah, is there a few things that are global in terms of maybe not necessarily a faux pas, right? But things we could all be doing better specifically to business, because again, I think it's an inside job for any situation, but in business, is there one or two things that we err in?
So we think about business across many different industries, whether it's client facing or interacting with colleagues. People do business with people they believe, like, and trust, right? So everything that we are doing in our lives has to try and help us to create that credibility, create our trust. I always say, as individuals, as a personal brand, but also representing companies, we don't have marketing teams for our own selves, right? That's our
Right.
job that we have to do.
Well, you have us though.
Well, you're building a
Yes.
foundation, right? You have to build a foundation from the trenches up, and
Exactly.
that's the rapport.
Exactly. And so I like to look at etiquette from through the lens of psychology, and so I'd like to understand how people perceive us and then what we can do with that information to help us put our best foot forward. So in business, whether it be an interview, a networking situation, a really big meeting, a really big presentation, whatever it is, when we understand that people are creating that trust and developing their impression of us based on, the majority of it is based on our nonverbal behaviors. Over half of the way that people
Yes.
perceive
Wow.
us is nonverbal
Yes.
behavior. So when we can understand that, we can kind of figure out how, again, we can't control how people perceive us, of course, but we can control how we put our best foot forward to go out into the world. And so what a lot of people forget about is how loud our body language is speaking for us. And so in business, when we're so focused on, saying the right things and we're having, that kind of social anxiety feeling, we're forgetting, how much our nonverbal behavior is communicating for us. So in any business situation, that's what I always tell people to check in with. Remember, lean on the facts, lean on the psychology. How is this person, perceiving me and developing that trust? And then what can I do to really make that a successful interaction?
And that's a
Great,
relationship
great. Yeah.
foundation, because if you don't know your audience and know precisely where to meet them on the journey you both found yourselves at the same point in, it's, to your point, it's almost impossible to have sort of any connection whatsoever.
Yes.
And I think when you master a few of your skills that you're speaking of, and I want you to share like maybe what the top 3 things we should do, we'll just say in a business setting.
Sure.
But when you're around people that are upping the game, should I say, that walk into the room, are confident, are well manicured, I kind of think it raises the whole expectation, especially in an office setting. Even, back in the day at church, you would never walk into church with a ball hat on. Well, now you see that all the time. And half the time I want to comb everybody's hair.
Or shorts.
Yes.
I mean,
or
I would
shorts.
never wear shorts to
No.
mass.
But some, in a business setting, you can, mastering a few of these skills, not to make other people feel, I don't know anything, but just to, be a little more sophisticated, a little more professional.
It's really I look at it in 2 ways. Part of it is, yes, for other people, because those first impressions happen
Yes.
in only a few seconds. So we have to have a visual component to it, because it's impossible for someone to get to know us for all the incredible things we have to offer on the inside. So yes, there is a visual component of what we're wearing, how we're carrying ourselves, what our body language is saying. But I also think that part of the way that we present ourselves is also for ourselves, because there is psychology behind when we look good, we feel good, and then when we feel good, we go out into the world and do good. And so I think it's for ourselves and others. We can look at it both ways.
No, I love that.
Well, Ann and I dress. We just dress. I mean, and sometimes now I tell you, and there's people on video calls that I wouldn't go to the grocery store looking like. And so to me, like, you are the personification of this, because fashion was important to you. Fashion is how you look. Fashion is what you're putting forward, and the camera opens up and you're like, wow, you look really good. Like, right? So it is that impression. I don't think most people verbalize it the way I do, but I do think now more than ever, with more isolation since COVID, this is really crucial, and history teaches us everything we need to know. Yeah. But you're re-energizing it for the 21st century for who's next.
Exactly, because I think that there's definitely a level of formality that is lacking or has changed since the pandemic.
Agree.
But part of my work is to really kind of take generations and reconnect us, and so to respect the traditions while also helping us evolve the way the world is going. And so to your point, a lot of what I hear from different businesses, one of the biggest complaints and the most common complaints is that lack of formality in that work from home situation.
Is formality is another word for that courtesy? Just kindness in terms of please and thank you? Is that a buggy whip, or is that something that
No,
this
we'd love to see that return.
reinforces as well.
Yeah.
I wish that common courtesy was an obvious thing that simply existed in all aspects of, business life, personal life. I think the formality maybe is a little bit different than the common courtesy. However, I think what they both have in common, the formality and the common courtesy, is the respect that it conveys.
Yes, that's a way to yes.
And I think sometimes I feel, and I'll just speak for myself, I'm probably a little too quick to criticize, but then when you have conversations, you realize that several of the younger generations do not know. Like, I expect them to know in settings, whether it's business or even, at family dinner, the can you pass me something, please? Or thank you for passing the bread. Simple common courtesies that do show respect, even with your family. I don't want to say this is just with business, but actually those
Sure.
closest to us is who we should be affording the most respect. But they don't know. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, my pleasure. And so again, part of what I do is, it is to keep the basics alive, right? What we hope are the obvious things that are not so obvious to everybody. But again, it's also viewing it as, how is this benefiting me, but also how is this considering the others around me, right? It's like, how can I make the intentional decision to say, what am I doing right now in this very moment that's going to convey that I care about your time, right? But also,
Great point.
If I showed up looking a certain way I know my job is very specific, but for an example, what would that communicate to people about how much I care about my work, how much I care about their time, how much I care about being on your podcast if I showed up in, if I didn't shower after the gym, workout clothes, right.
No, I love it.
And I think too that when I show up the way I look, I am showing someone the confidence in me and what I value. And you're right. I didn't think of it till now, but it's this common respect I'm showing for someone that I haven't even met.
Yeah.
That's going to forge that bond and that commonality, which I think is what we crave as human beings, as sort of pack animals.
It's so true, that connection, which is so important. And I'm such a firm believer in that in the work that I do, that relationships and connection are the foundation of not only business, but of our lives. And to your point too, Annie, it's, it takes 7 seconds for someone to form a first impression of us. And so as much as we don't mean to be judgmental humans, we are, because that's the way that our brains work. So we want to say, how can I be that walking movie trailer for somebody to say, okay, I want to watch that movie, right? I always think
I love that. You just shared a bunch of business vitamins.
Business vitamins. They're chock full.
How can I be the walking movie trailer so someone wants to watch the movie? That's so cool.
If you think about, yourself wanting to watch a movie, I'm not a huge fan of the movies because I fall asleep in 10 minutes, but that's a whole other story. But, you would likely watch the trailer or a preview of some sort to see if this is something that you'd even be interested in. And so, it's impossible for someone to get to know you so quickly. So it's like, what can I do? What's in my control so that I can give someone a really good movie trailer? You're advocating for yourself in such a competitive world where you're looking, especially in business, where you're looking for small things that are going to create that trust and going to lead to those connections. And that starts the minute you walk into the door.
No, I love it.
And I think one of the things that I'm really good at is understanding that not everyone's going to like my movie trailer. They're going to go, you know what? That's not for me. Like, for me, scary movies, forget about it. I don't need anybody. I don't need to be scared. And so I don't know why, Mariah, and look, I don't know why I get it or whatever. Like, I don't internalize the fact that I'm not someone's movie trailer and they don't want to watch my movie. I think that's it. Then they're not in my tribe. But guess what? I'm not in their tribe either. And don't we want to know that versus this sort of not phony connection, but an inauthentic connection?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. That's a whole other skill to master, right? We can talk about etiquette and soft skills and everything, but if you can master the fact that, you're not everyone's cup of tea, you're not everyone's movie trailer, I think that's another thing that's super, super important. Another skill that it's so key.
I agree. What are a few tips, Mariah, that you would share if someone is new to a business setting? They've started a job. Are there 2 to 3 things that would help them stand out etiquette-wise?
Yeah, so if we go back to presenting ourselves in our body language. We don't want to forget the small things that may seem obvious but really speak so loud to us. So we want to make sure that we are using visual cues to show that we're open and that we're ready to learn and that we're ready to make connections. And so some ways that we can do this, obviously good posture. And when everyone thinks about posture, they often think about your shoulders, right? Like put your shoulders back. My mom used to run around the house poking me in the back of the shoulder blades. Put my shoulders back. But what people often forget about is our chin. And our chin says so much about our confidence and our credibility. And so in a situation, maybe you're new to a business world and you're feeling nervous, the first thing that you want to do is dip your chin, right? Yeah. It's like a turtle crawling back into their shell. And so if you can keep your chin up, not all the way up because then you look snooty, but level with the ground, and you can show your hands early on, because that's another way to show visual trust, you're off the bat conveying openness and willingness to make connection. So that body language is something that you really want to lock into. Another thing that I would think about is the way that you, not only with body language, but the way that you are presenting yourself in every aspect that is, we would fall under those like soft skills, right? So asking questions, making sure that you're on time, making sure that you're putting your phone away, all these things that people are probably like, yeah, duh. Right? But those are the little things that add up to big things. And in a world where you're competing for opportunities, people are going to, again, choose people that they not only trust, but also value their experience with. And so in everything that you do, whether it be the way that you dress, how you're carrying yourself, your eagerness to help and learn, all of those things are going to, convey a certain amount of competency.
No, I love that.
And I just think, could we all smile more? Could we all have more contact? Could we say things like good morning or how's your day? Or I think those tiny little things, if they have that joy fountain within you, are easy to sprinkle on people. It's easy to share that. And I think too, when you're struggling or when you're not as sort of Tigger, right? You share that smile and all of a sudden someone's picking you up because they're smiling back. It's almost universal that if you smile at someone, you're going to get that back. And I don't need anything back. I'm smiling because I'm happy and I'm filled with joy. But when you do that, you can't underestimate how much that attaches to people.
It's so true. And in our world that's so technology based, I always tell people to look up from your phone when you're ordering coffee, I live in New York City. So when I smile at people, they probably think I'm crazy because people just look down and they're on a mission here. And I'm always trying to smile at people. But I always tell people, if you can put your phone away and acknowledge the people that you're crossing paths with, whether it's someone that you're sitting down to meet with or someone you're passing on the sidewalk, getting coffee from, picking up at the dry cleaner, whatever it is, those micro moments that we can use our body language to spread kindness. There's so much power in that, not only, again, to present ourselves well, but what that does for the other person. And I always think about that kindness as a domino effect, right? When you knock down that domino and make someone else smile, now they're more likely to go make someone else's day better too. And then it's never ending. You don't know how many people that you're really impacting by smiling.
That you pay that forward, and I said our evolution is going to change where our spine becomes, hunched over, and there's nothing that makes me sadder than a meal with people all on their they're not talking, they're not breaking bread, they're not, and that is not happening. The phone goes upside down, and when I'm in the moment, I'm in the moment. My phone's not anywhere near me, and the bottom line is I'm focused on you, I'm focused on it, and I'm focused on helping people in this time. And Mariah, that is easy. That should be very simple.
Yes, and especially if we're looking at it through the lens of business and being at meetings, and especially if you're new to your career or new to a certain job, and we go back to the way people are receiving messages from us, right? Over 55% is nonverbal. So what is that phone communicating to that person, right? Lack of interest, lack of confidence. Even if you don't intend for it to come off that way, if we're thinking about body language, having your phone out at a networking situation, in a meeting, that's signaling to the other person, I'm either not confident enough that I can't even look at the other people in the room, or I don't really care.
Yeah, my phone, whoever is on my phone is more important than anyone in this room. And that's like, and honestly, when you're that way and you establish that impression, to me, Mariah, people want to be around that more than an Eeyore. more than someone that's just, oh, here we go. And you're right. It just pays it forward.
know.
Annie, I'm sensing that you're a Winnie the Pooh fan.
I think Tigger is the biggest symbol
Tigger.
of just
She's Tigger.
just Tigger. Yeah. Oh well, no, Eeyore. I think.
Well, none of us, none of us surrender ourselves with Eeyores.
Lots of Tiggers.
By design,
Lots
yeah.
of Tiggers, not as many Eeyores.
So, Mariah, I love all of this, and I do think one of my brothers used to tell me all the time, "Ann, be where your feet are." So, looking the person in the eye that you're talking to, which is the ultimate form of respect. I've spoken before. You've probably had meetings where you'll notice one or two people are texting during the meeting. I think that's the ultimate disrespect. If you're there, especially if you're there for business purposes, if friends gather, you're out for coffee or a glass of wine or something, that might be a different story. But I was going to ask you on the question of hospitality. So if you're gathering with friends, we've got Mother's Day coming up. By the time this airs, it'll be after Mother's Day. If we are guests in someone's home, we are invited to someone's home. Can you give us some tips? And I think I read this before from you. What are some hospitality do's and don'ts?
Sure. So this starts before we even walk in the door with a few preparation things. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we're responding to our host in a timely manner. And I mean, this can be as formal as an invitation that comes that you have to send an RSVP card back,
Right.
or perhaps it was a casual gathering, it was a text invitation that, come over for dinner on Friday night. We still need to let our host know whether or not we're attending. So that's before we even walk in the door. The second thing before we walk into the door is we want to make sure we have a small token of gratitude for our host. So a host gift. Now I tell people you do not need to break the bank and bring these big
Right.
elaborate host gifts. It's more about the gesture. But if we're coming from an etiquette perspective, we want to think about really being mindful of what we're bringing. So that means not bringing food that we've previously previously asked to bring, not bringing flowers that need to be trimmed and a vase needs to be found, and anything that's going to distract our host. Those are things we want to stay away from. So I always recommend something that your host may not be purchasing for themselves. So whether it be like a jar of local honey or cocktail napkins, something from your farmer's market,
That's nice.
Something simple for them. And then once we get to the event, something important that I always tell people too is you want to make sure that you're being a good guest and engaging in conversation with people. That's part of your role. Even if you don't know the people there, don't let everything fall on your host to be introduced to people.
Good point.
Go be ready to converse with people. Be an active guest. Respect, obviously, the rules and the ways that people are doing things in their home. Another tip is that you want to make sure that when you sit at somebody's table, and there is a designated host or hostess, that you're not putting your napkin on your lap until they put their napkin on their lap. It's just a way to show them
Good.
respect, so you're not rushing them through whatever they're doing. And then, of course, following up with a thank you note if you didn't bring one with your gift, or if it's a less formal situation, I'm okay with a thank you text. I'm still a big proponent of a handwritten thank you note. But, I will always, I prefer the handwritten notes, but if we're...
Amen.
We're handwritten note fans.
We're
Yes,
handwritten
yes.
note. Yeah,
Yeah.
We're handwritten all the way.
I always prefer a handwritten note for any situation, a thank you, anything like that.
And I'll just say it's really tough for the host or hostess, for a guest who's not commingling, for a guest who's sort of just sitting there, for
Right,
it
right.
to not feel the pressure then as the host or hostess to stay way too long with that one guest or that one couple, right? And not be able to just flit around and pollinate every flower and really pay attention to everyone versus that one.
Well, you mentioned, be a good guest. I don't often think of it that way, but
Right.
that's an excellent point, that we often think we're there to be entertained, if we're at someone's home. But again, the onus is on us as well to be a good guest. So what do you think about if someone has food allergies and they come? What's an appropriate way? They just don't eat anything on, say they have a nut allergy or something. How would you recommend we deal with that?
So as a host, it's best to ask about dietary restrictions and allergies with the invitation. Now, I will say it's important for host guests, everyone, to note the difference between a dietary restriction and allergy
Right.
versus a preference. So a dietary restriction or allergy is a nut allergy, you're vegan, you have celiac, you can't eat gluten. A preference is that you don't really like to eat something. And so when a host asks you about your dietary restrictions and allergies, making sure that you're, understanding the difference between the two. And then if, as a guest, if your host does not ask you with the invitation, when you give your RSVP, that's when you can say, I kindly want to remind you that I have an allergy to shellfish. And then as a host, if it's a true allergy, like a real serious allergy, I would avoid having anything around, obviously.
Right.
If you know that guest has a serious allergy. Otherwise, making sure that they have an option or two.
No, good point. And I kind of, on that, I sometimes feel, and there are a few people in our extended family, that have like a peanut allergy. But if it is a preference, I feel as the guest, like I would just take care of that myself. I would either, I wouldn't make the guest feel, bad or like they should have thought of this. And I wouldn't make it a conversation point. I would just quietly, either pass on what I, could or couldn't eat, because the point is that you're there for fellowship and conversation, not necessarily to, have the 5-course meal.
So true. And something I learned from one of my mentors about the idea of etiquette, especially in dining situations, but really with anything, is things are only a big deal when you make them a big deal.
Right.
And not everything needs to be a big deal. Not everything deserves to be a big ordeal. And etiquette is so much about how you can make someone feel valued in your presence.
Yes.
And if you're going to make a big deal over something like that, especially if it was not an intentional thing by your host or whatever it is, it's, taking that 1 second to ask yourself, is this really something I need to, everybody should be doing that nowadays, right? Is this really something that I need to say? Like, everybody needs to turn on that filter a little bit more.
I know.
But, to that example, it's like, does this need to be brought up and made a situation? How am I going to make this other person feel in this situation?
Right.
And I sum that up as just being more graceful.
Yes.
Just having a
And
little
giving
bit
grace,
more
giving grace,
mercy.
yeah.
And that's really, it was, grit and grace, grit and gravitas. And it's just having that, I don't mean to be sexist, but having that elegance and that panache and that just go with the flow gratitude. If everything comes, that's my default, is gratitude. And so I think if we can just, to your point, Mariah, think more about that in the moment. And very little is a big deal. Very little is a big deal when we're talking about those things. And so I just think that subtlety is the grace.
Well,
and the
you
class.
can see now, if we would be having dinner with Mariah, we would just, like, our whole evening would be made. You lift up the room. Look at the smile.
Open the camera. She lifted up the room. Right.
Yeah.
It's easy to be. I'm a fangirl now.
So,
just like that. Just like.
so I think you said something very important is to, that we make sure the guest, knows that we value them for inviting us, and that the hostess or host knows that the guest is valued. And I think that transcends to business too, to our children, of how we treat them within the home and out of the home.
It does. So much about etiquette and manners are that foundation of how you can make others feel valued, and an easy way to do that, especially in a social or networking situation when you're having a conversation with someone, it comes from how well you're listening to them and making how do they feel in your presence. And so one quote that I always go back to when I think about my work and my mission is by Maya Angelou, and it says, people will forget what you did, they'll forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Amen.
No, I think if we could practice that every day, we would make everyone around us feel more valued. So, Mariah, just to close us out, and I hate to do that because it's
just like that.
It's our show, and we really could talk as long as we want to. I say that. What are 3 tips you would tell younger people? So whether they're entering the workplace or going back to college, what are 3 simple etiquette tips that would help them be have more confidence and feel better in more formal situations?
I think one would be to really master the art of talking about yourself, especially if you're someone new in your career, whether it be in interviews or in networking situations. Like I said, it's a movie trailer. You have a few seconds to get people to know what you want them to know about you. People are not mind readers, and a question or a phrase that often comes up is, tell me about yourself. What are you working on? What goals do you have? So being able to talk about yourself is a very underrated skill, right? Again, we have to advocate for ourselves. So it's something that you might not think about when you think about etiquette, but it's something I tell everybody, but especially new grads who are going out in the world and forming those connections. Learn how to talk about yourself. Come up with those key things that you want people to know. And then you say it with humility, right? When we tell a story, rather than listing things we've accomplished, it helps us come off more humble. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is to really lean into the way that you're communicating virtually and the etiquette around that. Because so much happens through, whether it be like a first Zoom interview or email interaction. You still want to have that level of courtesy and formality in our virtual communication, because again, that will stand out in a world where that doesn't really exist anymore either. And then the third thing I would say is to, and this is like a whole other conversation we could have, but is to really brush up on your table manners. In various industries, you may have interviews or meetings or things that are conducted over a meal. And I don't say practice table manners so that you look fancy or a certain way. I say to practice table manners so that everything is second nature and you feel comfortable navigating the things around you so that you can actually lean in to the conversation, which is really the point of that business meal. So those are the three things that I would recommend that new grads or people, breaking into new careers should focus on.
Oh,
She's exceptional. Mariah, you are exceptional.
So now we know when you have a 9-year-old, 8-year-old that asks you who's etiquette, now we know.
Now we know. Her name's Mariah.
I know. So Mariah, where can our guests and listeners find you easiest?
So I am everywhere, wherever you are on social media. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok are Old Soul Etiquette. LinkedIn is my name, Mariah Grumet Humbert. And then my website is www.oldsoulettiquette.com.
Oh, I love it. So
Thank
if
you.
are ever in Pennsylvania, now you're New York, so we're kind of neighbors.
Far.
You're not far. If you
far.
are ever in Pennsylvania, you must stop. We will arrange a meeting.
With the whole tribe.
I know.
With the whole tribe.
I absolutely will.
We would let you're only a train ride away. We'll be there and pick you up.
I absolutely will take you up on that.
It has been a delight. I have learned excellent tips. I can't wait to put them into practice. And Annie,
deep gratitude and appreciation, Mariah.
Thank you.
You are a
thank
force.
you so much. And okay, so back to Instagram. You got to get on and see what you're missing here. And I love your outfits and your hats you wear. She's just so awesome.
Elegant.
Thank you so much for your time. We value your time, and thanks for sharing your expertise with our Grit and Gravitas listeners. So have a high gear day. Thanks for listening. It's our desire that these stories will bring energy, ideas, and fresh thinking that you can use today. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram, and have a high gear day.